F1 is a big commitment. It's not just putting a sticker on the car. The Audi and Revolut brand identity, it felt very natural. If you look at Audi brand, it's premium but relatable. Ferrari is very premium, Aston Martin is very premium, but can you actually relate to Ferrari? While Audi, it's an accessible luxury. We are very committed to design. It needs to fit. No offense, but what HP and Ferrari have done to their cars is not good from a design perspective. How can you put blue on a red car? Like this is not good. I think PSG is an amazing case study of how you build a brand. What they've done is quite remarkable. They first brought a lot of very famous players. The players were bigger than the brand. And then they made a switch. They've just won the Champions League with assets that are not as marketable as what they were. Even Dembélé, who just got the Ballon d'Or, is nowhere near as marketable as Neymar, and Neymar never won the Ballon d'Or. From a brand perspective, you were probably partnering with PSG for the players, while you would partner today for the team.
Antoine, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Business of Sport.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's so exciting for a couple of reasons. First, it's my first show in this new studio, which hopefully you will recognise and see as a massive upgrade on what we had before. But secondly, this is such a different show to something we've done before because we always sit on rights holder side or we speak to athletes and owners. But today we're going brand side. We're going to where some of the big money is funneling into sport, helping a lot of these properties actually develop their propositions on the pitch. So it's the perfect place to start, I guess, just to go into the world of Revolut and the involvement in sport that you're increasingly having. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
On the journey, so basically the way we've worked on our marketing and growth journey probably started somewhere like 5 years ago, where we started to invest into marketing, where we realized that we had to invest more in the upper funnel on the brand to help position the brand and help us open the funnel, grow into more segments, and build credibility in the market. And associating ourselves to big IPs was important. So the starting point was the NBA sponsorship, where we were the presenting partner early in 24. And that was really the moment where we realized what sport could do to Revolut. And from there, we started to invest more and more into sport, and we could see the return on the investment that we were making. And that was the starting point, and the rest is history.
Well, what was that first partnership like when you made that move, and how did you reflect on that first relationship?
Yeah, so it was the NBA approaching us first. So we looked at it. We had never done anything of that scale and so on, so we were a bit hesitant at first. But then we looked at what the opportunity would be, how we could integrate our product, into it, how we could associate our brand and so on. We worked really hard in making it work because it worked on so many layers. So first of all, we had the opportunity to manage more ticketing. I think the ticketing aspect and the product integration that we could offer proved that this model between brand and product was actually a great platform. And then just the brand association was crazy, because there's hardly any bigger brand in sport than the NBA, And I think that really opened the door as well to more sponsorship. Because the day you demonstrate that you are able to work with a franchise as big as the NBA, well, you can pretty much deliver anything, after that, which I think has been super powerful.
But if we're going to put a canvas down of sport, I mean, there's so much on there. How do you even start?
So it's not like this. It's not like this. So we didn't say we want to go into sport. We said we have the NBA, but like the way we do a lot at Revolut, we had the NBA opportunity, and we said, okay, let's give it a try. Let's see how it works. Let's see how the platform works and how we can build around it. And then it worked. And then we said okay, now let's look at sport a little bit closer because it is actually a platform that can work for us. So we did not come from a feeling that we got to do sport. That was never the plan. The plan was more to say we need to invest more in the brand. how do we invest more in the brand? And today we still diversify a lot of our portfolio, because we're talking about sport, but we do a lot of music festivals as well. We do a lot of airports that you may have seen, and so on. We do a lot of TV, out of home, etc., etc. So we diversify our portfolio, but sport is really a place where we are anchoring more and more our positioning at the moment. It's true.
How do you look at evaluating the kind of success of some of these partnerships compared to maybe some of your other opportunities that you can work with across the business?
So we're looking at it there are two tiers, if you want, of two type of sponsorship that we're looking at. We have the global ones and we have the local ones. I think one of the big advantage of Revolut is that we are a global brand, which means that we can invest into global sports. Because it's really tricky, global sport. Like all those Premier League clubs coming to me who have a huge audience in China and so on. It's like, well, good for you. I mean, like, I'm not going to do anything with the audience in China, So, and it's the same for many sports, They always come with like, oh, we have 2 billion followers, viewers, and all that.
Oh, that's my least favorite thing. It's like, oh, we've got so many social followers. It doesn't mean they're fat.
Exactly. I mean, not only fans, but are they even my audience and so on? Yeah. It's like, well, good for you, But if I only operate in France or in Italy and so on, like, well, I'm not going to do anything, about it. So I think one of the key competitive advantages that Revolut has is that we are present in 39 markets and expanding quickly, So that gives us the opportunity to actually work with global IP. And that is the core of the strategy, saying that we versus our competitors, because if you look at our competitors, whether they are traditional banks or fintech and so on, the vast majority of them are super local. I mean, like in the UK, we have very local competitors. In France, we have very local competitors. In Germany, and so on. So they wouldn't be able to go into a global sport, because we'll probably talk again about F1, but F1 is in 20 markets, and out of those 20 markets, I'm in 17 of them. So that means I take the sponsorship and I can divide the sponsorship by 17. Well, if you're only in the UK, well, you divide it by 1, and suddenly it's a lot more expensive. And so that is really the layer number one, is being global, to suddenly position ourselves to a completely different level compared to our competitors that can't afford to be in that sport. So step one, position ourselves as big brand global. The other strategy is the local play, because what I was saying is that yes, all our competitors are local. So on one side, I want to appear global to suddenly appear in a different league, but I still need to be locally, culturally relevant. And sport is a great way for us to be super relevant at a local level. And that you need to go a level below. You need to go into some IPs and properties that are fundamentally local, that can really deliver something that really speaks to the audience, that is not just like flying super high, that is not necessarily super relatable because it's so, the distance with me is so high and so on, And that's how, for example, we have this great sponsorship with the Stade Toulousain, the rugby club, because then people can relate to that in France and so on, especially as well in the southwest region of France, and then you connect. And that's how, when the strategy we've had with sport happened, really with those two layers, the global ones to differentiate ourselves and the local ones to localize.
So before we go on, what are you partnered with at the moment?
Yeah, so
just give them a quick list.
All right, so if we start from the more global one, so the big one is obviously the Audi Revolut F1 team. So we are the naming partner. So that means the team is Audi Revolut. So that is the big one. Then we're investing as well into football. So we have a Manchester City partnership that helps us both locally in the UK as well as globally with the footprint that obviously the Man City brand has. We have Como, which is the football club in Italy, that is working really well both from a B2B and B2C side. We have the Stade Toulousain, as I was mentioning, with the rugby team. We have the NBA. So this year the NBA is happening in London and Berlin. So it used to be in France. Now it's helping us to target as well different markets. And there will be more announcements coming in in the next few months.
Perfect. Just sets it up nicely. And it also leads us into the big thing, right? The biggest thing. Probably, if you're talking about the rise of the sport over the last 10 years, one of the biggest sponsorship assets, one of the biggest cultural assets across sport, which is Formula One. The fight, I can only imagine, to be at the level that you've managed to get to now with the cars and the associations with the teams. This title sponsorship of Audi, how did it even come about when you are doing a deal like this for a title sponsorship of a team? Can you tell us how it works?
Yeah, sure. So it works in multiple ways. It starts with Audi reaching out to us and us looking at the opportunity. The thing is, you need to really quickly understand internally whether you want to enter the sport or not. Because F1 is a big commitment. Okay, F1 is not just putting a sticker on the car. It's a lot of activation. It's a lot of work to be done around it. So I think when Audi reached out, it was really the moment where we were seriously looking at more opportunities and potentially go tier one. When we looked a little bit at F1, you have so many levels of sponsorship that you can be in, and it became quite obvious to us that either you go very big or you go very small. Being in the middle is very difficult. It's a bit the death zone in some ways. That we believe for our brand was probably not appropriate.
Why is that? Because you don't end up being...
Because when you're right at the top, you get a lot of visibility that you can then really benefit from. While at the bottom, you probably can get some good product integration. So it's easier to get the ROI from a smaller cost. Okay, so while when you're in the middle, you get high cost, but you don't necessarily get the visibility that you might have at a title partner level. So then it was: do we go very small or do we go very big? Then we did a bit. We did extensive research and so on. We said now is the moment, especially when I looked at the coverage of F1, because now we launched just recently in Mexico, for example, we're in Brazil, we're in the US, which is a big priority for us. Now there are 3 GPs in the US. We know it's flying. We're in Singapore, we're in Japan, we're in Australia. We have plans to expand in the Middle East and so on. So you look at the map of F1, it overlaps almost perfectly with the map of Revolut, which is super important. As well, the home of F1 is Europe. And the home of Revolut is Europe, So the match was really, really strong. But then once you get into the ideas of like, okay, I think we need to explore further this thing. There's something there, There's something that potentially makes sense. Then you need to do your homework, saying, okay, so we want to go big. We want to go big in F1. Audi is a great opportunity, but we got to understand the full landscape. We need to become knowledgeable, about it. It's not because you watch F1 every weekend that you're knowledgeable about the world of F1. It's a very complex world to understand, especially for a brand to activate. So we spent months understanding everything that was out there. We've done everything without any agency, by the way. We've done everything ourselves. Everything was only in direct discussions between us and the teams. It was, which I think is very important to really grasp the opportunity to the higher extent. You need to be committed. You need to talk to people, whether it's within the teams, whether it's within the F1 organization, Liberty, etc., etc. You need to be across everything. Then you start the conversations. And then you look a little bit at where the teams are and where they want to go and how it matches with what we want to be. And that's when the discussion with Audi got to a better place.
Tell us about what you and I were just talking about before we came on, and the value of actually Audi as the brand, being that like premium but relatable brand, also having the history that it has in broader automotive industry, but also kind of being a challenger brand, if you want, in the world of Formula One coming in. Why was that important, and why was that a really good relationship for you to build in F1? Yeah,
that's why. Audi became the favorite choice very quickly. The alignment happened super quickly. First, from a brand perspective, if you look at Audi brand, it's premium but relatable. Ferrari is very premium, Aston Martin is very premium, McLaren is very premium, and so on. But can you actually relate to Ferrari? It's very different. While Audi, you can really access it. It's an accessible luxury in many ways. I think there was the brand identity. The brand identity is very important. I think Revolut, we are very committed to design. We're very committed to the user experience and so on. And it needs to fit, with it. No offense, but I think what HP and Ferrari have done to their cars is not good from a design perspective. How can you put blue on a red car? This is not good. While I'd say big kudos to MasterCard and McLaren. I think that is a great branding thing,
Chrome as well.
Yeah, and Chrome as well. I think what they've done with the wheel and so on, So I think there are brands that are doing a really good job, and I think that works well. That works really well. And then when I look at the Audi and Revolut brand identity, it felt very natural. So that's the first element. The second element is the narrative. The narrative is super important. We at Revolut are here to disrupt banking and to win against incumbents. And Audi is this, Audi is amazing from that perspective because they are entering a sport that is arguably the hardest sport on the planet at the moment. They come from zero, and they are building their car themselves. It's not like Cadillac who is buying the whole car and so on. Audi is building everything, the whole chassis, the whole engine, the gearbox, the power unit, everything is made by themselves, exactly like Revolut. We build everything ourselves, and we go from the ground and we build up, and that's exactly what Audi is doing. And then when you look at it, they have a strong track record of winning as well. I mean, that's the way they won Le Mans, that's the way they won in the World Rally, that's the way they won in Dakar, and so on, with a high level of innovation. And they won against the incumbents. That's what they are trying to do today, and that's what we are doing in our space. So the alignment was super natural, for us. And then I think the important part as well is talking to the team. I think the team that we've been in touch with Audi, the stars were aligned. We were working towards the same goal, and it felt like such a natural sponsorship.
I'm guessing you can't tell me how expensive it is to
become
a title sponsor. I have to channel my inner Harry at some point.
But you see the cost. We can talk about the cost, but for us, as I was saying, our competitive advantage is that I divide the cost by 20. So if you can take the numbers, divide it by 20, and you see how much it's costing my UK team. So because I basically distribute the cost across all my different markets, and then I'm asking every market, you got to pay for that sponsorship. So everyone is paying a little bit. But then, some markets, they're ready to put a couple of millions, here or there, imagine you'll be in Silverstone all over the thing, and so on. So you're ready to pay for that.
So once you've done the deal, what happens then? What's activation like? How are you integrating this into Audi as a brand, and then obviously directly seeing the feedback for you as the business?
That's the depth of F1. The F1 is so deep. We talked about the depth from a geographic perspective. So I need to integrate everything at a local level, but as well from a product line perspective, because it's both a B2C and a B2B platform. And you can see it from the nature of the sponsors. You have AWS, Workday, etc. You have a lot, Atlassian, you have a lot of very B2B brands, because it's a great B2B platform. So at Revolut, we need to work on both those aspects. On the B2C side, it's about how do I activate beyond the GP? So it's how do you put more media, into it? How do I manage some ticketing, and offer perks to my customers? Money can't buy experience in many ways. We have Rev Points, which is the space where we manage all our lifestyle offering. So we're going to put a lot of F1 into this space so that people can actually access this, which was what when I was discussing to the teams and telling them that we were unfortunately not working with us, they thanked me for entering the sport, because that's the power of Revolut. In the same way that Netflix is bringing F1 to hundreds of millions of people, we're bringing to 70 million people. because that's our audience.
That's fascinating.
So we are a platform, we're a media platform in some ways,
So other teams that you were speaking to when you had that conversation, there was still that gratitude for the value that it brings. Wow.
Because because obviously a company like Revolut will activate probably a lot more the sport than Aramco. Like for the sport itself, having Revolut, which is a very tech company, super innovative, etc., with a huge audience, we are bringing the sport to the audience, which is great.
And of course, Formula One is something because of its system. It fits more the American model where there's this kind of collective empowerment. We all do better. Everyone does better. Rather than if you look at something like in English football, it's like, I want my greatest rivals to do terribly. So being a part of this collective group where it is the rising tide conversation.
Yeah.
But interestingly on that, this has been something that has developed so much over the last 10 years. If we talk about the marketability right, and the global exposure of Formula One, if I had offered you a similar opportunity 10 years ago, whether it was when you were king or let's say Revolut, even now, would you have the same appetite? Or is this something that's been born out of the incredible work and greater exposure that Liberty's managed to drive through their ownership of Formula One?
So I think Liberty is doing a fantastic job. I think the sport has grown a lot. But let's remember that F1 has always been big. All right, everyone remembers Ayrton Senna. Everyone remembers Marlboro sponsor on whether it was a Ferrari or a McLaren. Like still, there are memories, from before, even from a sponsorship perspective. So it's not like it was a lot of tobacco brands, yes, but like we do remember them, and they're still benefiting today. The brand equity of those tobacco brands is coming from that past. So it was not a small sport, and that's why I think the incredible thing with this sport is that I think we're doing a great job in modernizing it, but it's still building a lot on its legacy, because it's really hard to take an IP from scratch and develop it without any legacy. And I think that's what F1 has done really well. They've promoted their history, and their legacy a lot in keeping it evergreen. It's evergreen while not denying what's in the past.
It was huge, but it was focused, a little bit more focused than it was now. Your fans, and for example, Louis Vuitton, right? LVMH as a whole, I don't think would have invested in Formula One 10 years ago. Yeah, they would now.
Yep.
And they're the ones that we're seeing across all the tracks is premium sponsorship, premium inventory.
Yep.
So
but I think what has changed, if I may, is this sport, and I think that's why as well Revolut has entered it, is that it's somehow at the border between sport and lifestyle. I think it's probably the sport that has the biggest lifestyle component, and you can see it. I mean, obviously Netflix is a big one. But I mean, when they film the drivers' girlfriends and all of that, I mean, there's a lot in the Daily Mail about Lewis Hamilton and all of that. So whether you like it or not, it's part of the sport. Yeah. It's definitely part of the sport. And while football is a little bit like that as well, I don't think it's to the extent of Formula One. In the same way, and I think the great example is going to a GP. If you've attended the GP, you realize that you see nothing of the race. So you don't go to... I mean, because basically you're either on one straight line or in a corner and so on, and you just see the same thing. And you got to see the screen to know who's first, who's not. I mean, because you have no clue by watching it. If you want to watch the sport, better be at home. It's much better. You see much, much better. But still, you have 400,000 people on every single GP to come and see it. Why? Because they want to feel the experience. While when you go and watch football game, yes, you can see the football game, while you don't really see a GP when you go there. Because it's part of this whole thing, that F1 has managed to build very much on lifestyle and experience.
And one thing that the increased exposure Netflix, as you said, more entertainment product has built really well, is more access to the drivers. I mean, I think I was probably like 10 before I realized what Michael Schumacher looked like. Because my relationship was with the helmet and the car. Right. And now, you can't... I know what they all look like. You mention any driver's name and you can picture them if you follow it even briefly. So that development has given them a new opportunity. But we were talking again briefly about the value of individuals and athletes as part of sports teams, and their value then to brands. So when you're looking at a Formula One team, this year, I think next year it's still going to be Gabriel Bortoleto and Nico Hülkenberg as the drivers.
Yep, absolutely.
What access do you get? Is that part of the deal where you can then work with them across the products? Are they included in any package?
Yeah. So so obviously, I mean, like Nico being German, and Germany being a market where we're probably have the most room to grow in Europe, and Brazil being a huge market for us. We have a tough competitor there, and it's going to offer us a great platform, for us to grow. I mean, and as well, F1 is a huge thing in Brazil, and Gabi is the only Brazilian on the grid. Yeah. So that's obviously a huge asset for us, and we will leverage that asset to its full potential. What is very interesting, you see, between F1 and the other sports is because of the stability in the grid, both from a team perspective and from a driver perspective, you have a compounding effect of how the brand is building up. Because in, let's say, football, you have a lot of reshuffle all the time. New players coming in, new teams qualifying for Champions League, and some not qualifying for Champions League, and so on. So you always have a little bit of a reset. You have a lot less reset in F1, which means you have this compounding effect year after year, where you make brands bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, which is very unique compared to any other sports because it's not being refreshed that often, And if you see, Nico has been in the sport for more than 10, 15 years. Gabi now is going to be here for the third year, and so on. So it's going to be a big thing, yeah.
And tell me about the importance in general of athletes and brand athletes when you're making some of these decisions. How do you look at it?
Yeah, so it's the combination of both. So I think the badge, so the team IP, is what gives you the stability and the reputation. I think it's very important because it has usually there's more authority in the badge than in the player or the driver. I think I use the IP of the team more to set things at a global level, and the drivers or the players more at a local level. So to play more from a local perspective and so on. So that's more the way I look at it.
Can you give me the PSG analogy? It was a really interesting look at the tussle that we see in lots of sports between brand and performance, and if they come into conflict, how do you prioritize?
Yeah, I think PSG is it's an amazing case study of how you build a brand. I think what they've done is quite remarkable in the sense that if you look at basically they started 10, 15 years ago when QIA came into PSG, they first brought a lot of very famous players. Whether it was Latam, whether it was Beckham, Sergio Ramos, a bit later was Messi, Neymar, and obviously Mbappe. So what they started to do is by building the brand through the players. The players were bigger than the brand. And they kept on building this because little by little, the brand started to catch up with the players. And then they made a switch not so long ago where the brand became bigger than the players. And then they kind of refocused into team efficiency. And you can see that they've just won the Champions League, they've just won the Ballon d'Or with assets that are not as marketable as what they were. Like even Dembele, who just got the Ballon d'Or, is nowhere near as marketable as what Neymar, and Neymar never won the Ballon d'Or. Still Neymar, a lot more marketable. So if you look at from a brand perspective, as a partner, you were probably partnering 5-10 years ago with PSG for the players, while you would partner today for the team. And the shift that they've made in building the brand through the players and then making that swap into then suddenly having the PSG brand above the player brand, I think is quite remarkable. And now they've established an IP that is going to last for a very long time.
Is this a challenging environment then for a lot of sports organisations? We can look at something like football. We now have to maybe make a decision between do we make the most money and make ourselves the most appealing from a value perspective, or do we win?
Yeah, it is a challenge. It all depends on what you want to do from a brand perspective. But obviously, what you're looking for is reach. You want to have reach and you want to have brand alignment. It's as well, how do you manage your risk? So when you build your business case, and let's say you assume no one wins, well, you want the marketable one, at least, because otherwise you get into the gambling business. Because as a brand, am I here to gamble and bet on a team that is probably not as marketable, but has a chance to win? So of course, if you win, it's going to be great, But that's a bet, and we as a business, we are not in the betting in the betting area, So we can't really do that.
But do you think? So it's interesting then. Do you think having a direct association with Hamilton right now, let's say, versus having a relationship with McLaren, using this season as an example? Do you think it's
I would
more
rather be
valuable
with
as a brand?
McLaren.
You'd rather be with McLaren?
I would rather be with McLaren. Yeah, because they're winning and so on. For the brand, I think it's much better. Otherwise, I think there's a bit of drama around Ferrari happening at the moment, which is not very good for the brands that are there. So you don't like noise, when you're a brand. You want very you want to take calculated risk. And you want to control a little bit some of the things, and you don't want to have your brand being exposed.
How much do you have to consider risk when looking at something like Audi coming into the sport? For all the good things about it, we don't know how everything happens and how it performs, and your brand closely tied to it. Title sponsor now. How much of that decision-making process is incorporating that risk? What do you think are the biggest risks? Yeah,
it's a calculated risk. Obviously, when you come with a brand new car, you don't know what the performance is going to be. But at the same time, you need to manage expectations, especially in the first seasons, that we're building everything from scratch. And I think expectations from the public is that F1 is super hard. So you probably don't expect Audi to win next year. I don't think we're going to win. We're going to win next year. But then you look at the plan, the roadmap we have, and so on. And the idea is to fight for championship by 2030. And I think that's a good time horizon, for us by saying, because that's what we want to do as well. We want to dominate the world of banking in the next 5 years. We have the same time frame, and we know it's going to be hard for us. It's going to be hard for Audi, and that's what I mean by calculated risk, is that you bet into something that is extremely hard. Because the worst is, imagine you decide to sponsor Real Madrid, and then the next 3 seasons, they win nothing. That's an absolute disaster.
How long, therefore, do you look for if you're doing one of these deals? What do you think is the optimal time to be able to achieve that and go? I hate using the word, but it's a bit of a journey, right? You got to grow with this team.
Yeah, because I think if you, and this is what I think is quite new as well for Revolut. If you exit too early, you will not capture the benefit of it. So I think, depending on the type of sponsorship, and obviously, with Audi, because we're building everything, it got to be a long-term partnership. Because you don't want to be here, let's say, for the first 2 years, where everything is just being built, and there's no performance, which makes sense. And then suddenly the performance comes later. Well, you've paid for everything to build up, but you're not collecting the dividends in a way from it. So I think, depending on what the roadmap of the team is, I think justifies how long the commitment is.
And with that, then, does your measurement of what success actually looks like, does that change? If you have the scale of success, you have the bedding in period, and then you have hopefully full optimization, you win a world championship, and in 2030, obviously, you're getting the McLaren exposure, hopefully now.
Yeah. So, you obviously focus on this compounding effect that you're expecting from the repetition. The repetition of the exposure and the association, from it will be super, super important. Because we'll be there from day one, we have the opportunity to become a generational sponsor. Because if we manage to really take the team to the top for a long period of time and so on, Revolut would have been there from day one. And I think this idea of building generational sponsorship, the ones that kids have in their room, that's what we're aiming for. And that requires long-term commitment.
Tell us about then how you look at football. You mentioned Manchester City being the partnership. I'd imagine now that you're in market and people know you're in market, you are inundated with people trying to access the Revolut brand. How did you decide on Manchester City and Manchester City women in particular as that point for you to enter the market with?
Yeah, so, I mean, of course, we talk to a lot of football teams and so on. I mean, trying to understand, you need to understand the market, you need to understand the opportunities, and so on. I think with Manchester City, first of all, it's a great brand. I think we're looking for some level of innovation, some level of forward-looking and so on. And women football in the UK is a huge thing. It's a huge thing. I mean, you saw the Euro this summer was absolutely fantastic. I mean, the enthusiasm that all the fans were having and so on is showing that women football has great future. And Man City is one of the best teams from a women football perspective. So I think for us, it's a great sponsorship because you get both worlds at once. You get Man City as a great brand, and you get women football, which is a very progressive and sport that is on the rise. So you get really the best of both worlds: great IP and great sport, which is very inspiring in so many ways. So for us, it was a really great sponsorship, which was quite unique. In the same way, Como is very unique at the same time, because Como is a new club in Italy, super lifestyle. The stadium is by the Como Lake and so on. You got a lot of celebrity coming in. It's really well managed, and everything makes it like such a unique sponsorship in the world.
Why would tribal not be great for a brand like you?
You don't want to be divisive. I think you want to be super inclusive in everything that you're doing, and ultimately, I don't think I think you just need to be super careful with those things. It's probably a conservative approach that we have at the moment. We've never really tried anything like that. So I think right now we just try to be as inclusive as possible.
So almost answering this question and therefore asking it backwards, do you think that's the value that women's football has over men's football from a brand perspective?
I mean, honestly, I go a lot with my kids in Barcelona. I mean, we have an amazing team in Barcelona. We went to see the Clásico the other day. It's lovely. I mean, honestly, it's lovely. It's the quality of football is really strong. I mean, when you see Aitana playing and so on, it's
bad injury. This week,
Bad. I mean, but Alexa Putellas is super strong as well. But I mean, honestly, the quality of the show is strong. The experience is really good, at the moment. So. You just got to experience it. I mean, while men's football, I think there's nothing like men's football in terms of getting you like really. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah,
amazing. I love football. I love football. It's just that maybe for a brand, you need to be very selective and very careful about what you do.
And similar to the brand value that we've talked about for the male athletes, what about the brand value now that we have for the female athletes? I know you have Alex Greenwood as part of the Man City deal as one of partners. How do they build that value? Where have you seen the great work that they can do for you alongside obviously the badge?
So they are great ambassadors, for us. So we've leveraged the team and the players. The level of recognition that those athletes have currently in the market is astonishing. And honestly, the gap between men and women is closing as we speak. So it's really exciting. Really exciting.
What about the different kind of like assets? I guess when you're going into these deals, front of shirt is so well known. Let's say for football, right? But there's so much more now, particularly as the game's developed and digitalization and media and all of this. What are the types of assets that you have the opportunities to? So
for us, it's what is very important. So of course you want. The logo, being as present as possible. But I think for us, where we've put a lot of emphasis is on the product integration. Product integration is critical. We've realized that in airports, when we took all the jet bridges in 18 airports, what we've done, we've put the logos, but then you have vending machines in the terminals where you can get the cards. That is a product integration. And we're doing the same in sport. So we talked about the ticketing. Obviously, doing stuff on ticketing is important. Co-branded cards as well is super important. The B2B integration, is super important. For example, we manage FX for Como. So when the transfers are processed through Revolut, so because we have great FX, so at the end of the day, we make them save money and so on, and you do this. We process payments as well. RevPay is integrated into this. So, for example, with Audi or the Adidas merch, when you buy Adidas merch with Audi and so on, it's processed through RevPay. So you manage to integrate the product as deep as possible. Because not only you get some return on investment, but as well people can experience Revolut firsthand. So they're experiencing the sport they're watching, but at the same time, Revolut is just here, and I think that's critical.
How do the ways that fans convert through your relationship with football assets change to how you foresee them converting through Formula One?
Yeah, it's pure. Well, you have a lot of hospitality, so I think we're going to do a lot of B2B hospitality and so on, and take that opportunity as well to engage with some of our best B2B and enterprise clients, and try to close as many deals as we can. I think that's on the B2B side.
On F1.
On F1, yeah, which is really powerful. That's what all the big brands are all doing. So I think that's going to be very, very. That's what all the big AWS and so on, they're all activating, through that. So we will demonstrate that Revolut, as a product, has the ability to run an F1 team. So once you can run an F1 team, and you're a business here and so on, can probably run my business too, and using this again, product integration. If the whole team is running on Revolut business, well, then we can probably run a lot of businesses in a highly, highly efficient way.
What do you think about something like stadium sponsorships and naming rights with the value they can bring, especially when it comes down to product integration?
Yeah, I think naming is interesting. So first of all, when you look at naming, you need to look at the legacy of the stadium. So you probably need to have a stadium that doesn't have too much legacy, because that legacy will always be, well, at least at the beginning, will be stronger than your brand. So you will struggle to overtake that legacy. For example, if you look at Camp Nou, the Camp Nou Spotify, is it going to be Camp Nou Spotify or is it going to be Camp Nou? It's tricky, you know what I mean? While Emirates Stadium, there's no legacy in Emirates Stadium. It was Emirates Stadium. It will always be the Emirates Stadium, So I think that's the first thing that you need to look at. Then, as a bank, you need to see how you can run your product integration. So if you can manage payment across the whole stadium, if you can manage some ticketing, etc., I think is important. I think the other thing you need to look at is how much the audience is being refreshed event after event. So that's where football is not so good in some ways, because you tend to have the same audience coming every weekend to the place, while if you look at the O2 Arena, it's a different audience when it's a Metallica concert or a Lady Gaga concert, So it's very... you reshuffle a lot more the audience if it's a concert venue versus if it's a sport venue. But then you have sport venue that bring a lot of concert at the same time, or that are multi-sport and so on. So it's I don't think you can just put a price on a stadium of 50,000 is that much. A stadium of I think it's really a case by case. I think, but why not? I've nothing against it. We haven't done it yet. But I can see where the business case is. I can see it.
It's interesting because Tottenham, have been in market. They have that incredible new stadium. I don't know if you've been. And
No, I haven't been.
It pains me to say it as a Chelsea fan, but it is so impressive when you go in there. And it incorporates so many different businesses in one. Yeah. It's amazing experiential. They have Formula One karting under the pitch. It's obviously an NFL stadium as well. They host concerts there. So in my head, I'm looking at it and I'm going, it's so interesting they actually haven't managed to nail that down, because from what you said, you get a relatively good refreshing of people coming through the door because you've got entertainment properties that do use it. You've got a brand new stadium, so no one has an association with anything. It's not White Hart Lane to the extent of the old one.
The challenge you have is that at that price point, you don't have that many brands that can afford it. Okay, and because the price point is really high, so the selection of brands that can afford going there is limited, and many of them are getting more and more equipped because naming rights. You have more and more naming rights, because if you add up all the front of shirt of football, all the F1 sponsorship, all the big sponsors, it's already a lot of properties, and brands that can afford that price tag. You don't have like 100 of them, So I think at some point there's a high level of competition between all those properties to actually bring a partner. So I think that's a little bit the struggle you have.
You look at America, the biggest teams across those sports in general. Dodgers or Giants or pick any of those top teams.
Yep.
They will brand their stadiums.
Yep.
Now you apply that here into the market. Yep. Spotify Camp Now. That's a unique example. If you're looking at the teams with heritage, I can only imagine what would happen if you turned around to Anfield and put a brand on it, or Old Trafford.
Yeah, you can't.
And that's again, that's the interesting difference here. Where it almost comes back to that revenue commercialization, total value recognition versus the importance of heritage and legacy. Would that be valuable for Liverpool and Man United? Absolutely. Man City, as you said, they're a different brand and they stand for different things. The Etihad is now synonymous. Airlines have been the big thing here. You'll know better than me, but even just trying to think, a tech business, i.e. Spotify, coming into Barcelona, that's very progressive for Europe.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see if there's a little bit more of that type of involvement from what we would class as tech brands, not legacy heritage brands that are like airlines, that are like banks.
And I think the teams in Europe, they realize that. They are very much aware of that. And I think that's why as well they are very interested. That's why I talk to a lot of different teams. They are very interested in working with Revolut. A brand like Revolut is really good for them. It's really, really good. I think the work that Spotify is doing with Barcelona is amazing. I think the activations that they are doing, it's really world class.
What about it is really good?
So they use the front of shirt, for example, for any release of new albums and stuff and so on. I think it's just super cool. It's really it's not rocket science, but suddenly it makes as well every jersey collector, because then they sell them. So people are now buying jersey for the sponsor.
We have the Rolling Stones one in the office. It gets more comments than anything else.
Exactly. So they become collectibles, and they become collectibles not because of the team, but because of, I think it's genius, and I think I think it has a halo effect on Barca itself, because suddenly it makes Barca a lot more modern, a lot more innovative, etc., etc. And now they just signed Uber as a sponsor as well. So suddenly you get into a place with Barca that has big tech. The big tech are working with Barca, which I think is going to help. And then they're having the super innovative Camp Nou, which hopefully will be finished at some point. I mean, it looks like it's taking a bit of time. But they're really repositioning the team. They have a super young team. They have tech sponsors. They will have best stadium in the world and so on. I think they are doing a great job at that. They just need to fix their finance and all of that, and then they'll be in an amazing place. When you look in the future. So you see, this is where teams don't select the sponsors only just for the money. They are really working. It's really working hand in hand, and that's how we are working with all our different teams. That's why we'd rather call it as a partnership rather than a sponsorship, because we actually help as well the team, because it's the way you activate. Because when you work with oil companies, etc., yes, they bring a lot of money, but how are they going to really help the brand and the IP in making the IP even bigger and so on? And that's where companies like Revolut will really help in doing that. So it's a win-win thing. So we work with them to leverage their IP. They work with us to leverage our IP.
Yeah. I was just thinking as you were saying that about what we've got now in Formula One, for example, because that shift you can actually see happening. You've got Airwallex, involved with McLaren. We obviously mentioned Google Chrome, the wheels. You have Atlassian with Williams. You now will be Audi. Yep. The Petronases of the world and Mercedes, where that may have used to dominate along with booze and cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's now moving into this side of the world, which is great because it does bring again the total value of the proposition up. It's not just a cash transaction,
exactly.
Which is great. We just need some of the other sports to follow.
Football is a little bit stuck at the moment with like Middle Eastern airlines. It's a lot of Middle Eastern airlines. Paris is Qatar Airways, Barca. Real Madrid is Emirates. Now Atletico Madrid is Riyadh Air, and so on. So it's like it's very. I think the fans, they probably want to see something else.
How do you break those cycles? Because that is the hard bit, right? You need to get people into those organizations that understand how to speak to a business like a Revolut, not a team like Emirates.
Yeah, but because at the end of the day, when you present a deal to a team, you have the money aspect, but you have the partnership aspect, and the teams are looking at both. They are looking at, okay, fine, this is the money. Okay, I need the money, to run my team. But at the same time, I have a long-term strategy into developing my IP. And each time they have a deal on the table, they will compare the deals, not just money to money. They will look at the bigger picture and try to understand, okay, how is that actually helping me? As well as, the sponsors, the partners have their say as well. In the sense, when you're the front of shirt of a team, you do have a say into who the team is going to put on the sleeve. Because the best place is when those two brands, between the front of shirt and the sleeves, are complementary and therefore are willing to work together, to build activations together and so on, rather than being completely disconnected with nothing at all and so on. In the same way, we are super excited to work with Adidas on Audi F1. It's really good. I think there's a lot of things that we can do together, which is great.
Being a bank, how important is age and that profile, capturing people at the right time?
Yeah, of course, you need to look at your segment, at your audience. Each sport has its own audience, whether it's more male-focused or female-focused. That's why we liked as well F1. It's actually very balanced. I think it's very spread by age and by gender, which is really strong. But you can do different things. Like you should not have every partnership to cover all your segments. It's more how you build your portfolio in order to address your wider audience. But that's why I just don't look at sport to do that. That's why I do sport and music festivals, whether it's Primavera Sound, whether it's Seagate, et cetera, where we are the main partner there. But so it's a portfolio strategy to make sure that when you put all the Lego together, you're actually spot on covering your whole audience.
So is that where the value of rugby is? Well.
Exactly. So rugby is great. So we are with the Stade Toulousain, which is really helpful because it's a different audience. It's a bit more B2B. It's a great B2B platform. For example, rugby a lot more than football.
In what way? Just the fact that people You can give a really good experience on a...
Yeah, and as well, the audience is quite a B2B. And you can see as well that the demographic is slightly older. Unfortunately, it's basically the age of and the gender of decision makers. It's a little bit like golf. In a way, golf is very B2B as well. It's a great B2B platform. Tennis as well somehow is a pretty good B2B platform, compared to football, who's a lot more B2C from that perspective. So you look at it from all that perspective.
So tell me then, we've got all of this that you've already achieved within sport, and now you mentioned there's things coming on the horizon. I know you won't be able to speak specifically about them, but where are we looking at developing everything that we've talked about here? How are you looking at the future of this side of the business?
So the future of it is, I think, it's to continue expanding our local penetration. I think we're in 39 markets. I think we can be smart in doing things in some markets. You have you have markets that have their own specific things. So, for example, whether it's in Greece or Lithuania, it's a basketball country. In Poland they love volleyball. In Scandinavia they love hockey. So you need to make sure you do things that are super relevant. And I think we can do more of as well smaller deals. I think right now there's a lot of effort on the big one, the flagship one. But then it's about how do you activate locally with some smart deals, maybe not the ones that you will see all over your TV, all the time and so on, but that actually locally would feel ultra relevant. I think that's very interesting because the price tag is very different, but the way you activate it, et cetera, I think can be super powerful. And now I have 39 markets to cover. So how do I get into a deal that actually makes sense?
And it sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, we can't deny it. This job must be taking you to some pretty great things.
Yeah, it's fun, but you need to be very very agnostic of things. You need to be very rational and make sure you don't let your emotions speak. So it's fun, but actually I think it's killing the fun. So I think it's from the outside, people say, oh, you got the best job in the world and so on. But because you need to always make rational decision about everything, each time I go to a game and so on, I don't really look at the game. I look at the business opportunity, which is the exact opposite of what you go when you go watch sport. For me, watching sport is actually doing the opposite and thinking about work. Yeah. It's not thinking about work. It's about relaxing, being with friends, having a beer and so on, and just having fun. Now, it's the opposite. I can't watch sport without thinking about work, which is, so you think, yeah, I do a lot, but then is it actually fun? It's debatable.
You can still go and decompress watching Marseille, no?
Yeah, I love Marseille.
Brilliant. Look, on that note, I've loved it. Honestly, this is fascinating. We haven't, as I said, dived into this side of the industry properly from someone on your side of the table. So getting a little bit of an understanding about this, I know people will be so pleased, so relieved to hear us ask some different questions as well. So thank you so much for joining. So enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.